Bullies shoved the girl into the dumpster. Colossal error. She was a vicious combatant. Hazel Carmichael paused near the entrance to Oakhaven Academy, tightly gripping her faded satchel handle as students rushed past, as if she were invisible. Being slender, barely reaching 5'2" with a fragile build that made her appear like a younger student, she wore her auburn hair in a messy braid and avoided eye contact as she walked through the packed hallway. Almost a month into the term, she still felt like an outsider in this sprawling maze of classrooms and teenage cliques. The relocation from Montana had been unexpected when her father received a promotion at work. Hazel missed her old boxing gym, missed her coach, missed the reliable schedule of practice every evening after lessons. Here in Pennsylvania, she hadn't found a new combat sports gym yet, and without that release, she felt uneasy. More importantly, she'd promised her father she'd try to blend in at this new academy, which meant concealing her 6 years of kickboxing training. Her father worried that Hazel's fighting prowess might get her into difficulty, especially after the incident at her former school where she'd defended a younger boy from tormentors. "Just concentrate on your learning and making friends," her father had mentioned. "Leave the brawling behind." Hazel had agreed, recognizing the wisdom in those words. She'd noticed how her image as a fighter had alienated her before, how other students either feared her or wanted to challenge her. This time would be different. This time, she'd be ordinary. The canteen echoed with the familiar midday frenzy as Hazel found an empty spot near the corner. She unwrapped her bread roll and tried to dismiss the glares from nearby tables. Being new was challenging enough without attracting attention for other reasons. She'd learned to dress plainly, wearing baggy sweatshirts and keeping her athletic form hidden. Most people assumed she was just another quiet, studious student. The air hung thick with the aroma of stale pizza and adolescent angst. "Well, well, what do we have here?" a voice announced behind her. Hazel turned to see 3 girls approaching her location. The ringleader was statuesque and brunette, with meticulously styled hair and expensive garments that reeked of affluence. Her name was Tiffany Sterling, and she ruled the senior class with an iron fist of social control. "The fresh arrival thinks she can occupy any space she desires," Tiffany continued, her voice coated in fake politeness. Her 2 sidekicks, Madison and Ashley, snickered in unison. All 3 girls were volleyball players, well-known and untouchable in the academy's social pecking order. Hazel kept her gaze lowered. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was your area." "Everything in this canteen is my area," Tiffany remarked, sliding into the seat opposite Hazel. "You're a newbie, so perhaps you don't grasp how things function here. Allow me to clarify." The canteen seemed to quiet around them, other students sensing trouble and turning to observe. Hazel felt her face grow warm with embarrassment as Tiffany launched into a detailed description of the academy's unspoken regulations, all designed to keep Hazel in her place at the bottom of the hierarchy. "And one more thing," Tiffany mentioned, reaching across the table to snatch Hazel's bread roll. "This is my snack now. New arrivals have to earn their way up to eating privileges." Hazel's hands tightened into fists beneath the table. She could feel the well-known surge of adrenaline, the muscle memory of years of training, urging her to react. But her father's words echoed in her mind. She forced herself to relax, to breathe deeply the way her coach had taught her. "Fine," Hazel replied quietly, gathering her belongings. "I'll find somewhere else to sit." "Actually," Tiffany countered, standing up and blocking Hazel's route, "I believe you should eat somewhere more fitting, like outside, with the leftover garbage." The laughter that followed felt like a physical blow. Hazel brushed past them, her cheeks burning with humiliation, and spent the rest of the lunch break in the library. She told herself it was just one event, that things would improve once she proved she wasn't a threat to their social dominance. The silence of the library was a stark contrast to the noisy cafeteria, but things didn't improve. Over the following weeks, the harassment increased. Tiffany and her cohorts made it their goal to make Hazel's life miserable. They accidentally bumped into her in the hallways, knocking her books to the ground. They spread rumors about her family, claiming her father was a street sweeper and they lived in a rundown apartment. They excluded her from group projects and gossiped about her whenever she passed by. The worst part was how everyone else just watched. Teachers turned a blind eye, claiming they didn't notice what was happening. Other students looked away, thankful it wasn't them in the firing line. Hazel felt completely alone, questioning whether keeping her fighting skills a secret was worth this daily torment. The breaking point arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in early November. Hazel was heading to her locker after chemistry class when she heard Tiffany's voice echoing off the walls of the almost deserted hallway. "There she is," Tiffany announced, appearing around the corner with Madison and Ashley in tow. The little mouse who believes she's too good to interact with people. Hazel tried to walk past them, but Ashley stepped in front of her while Madison moved to block her escape. They'd performed this routine before, cornering her in empty hallways where no teachers would see. "We've been thinking," Tiffany remarked, circling Hazel like a predator, "that perhaps you require a lesson in respect. You've been here over a month and you still behave like you're superior to everyone else." "I just want to be left in peace," Hazel replied, her voice barely audible. "That's not how this works," Tiffany countered. "You don't get to ignore us. You don't get to behave like we don't exist." Hazel felt the familiar tightness in her chest, the way her breathing became shallow when she was trying to manage her temper. Her coach had taught her that anger was a tool, but only when used properly. Right now, she was using every bit of self-control to keep that tool sheathed. "I'm not ignoring you," Hazel said. "I just don't want any problems." "Too bad," Tiffany mentioned, "because problems found you." What happened next would replay in Hazel's memory for days afterward. Tiffany grabbed her satchel and yanked it away, sending Hazel stumbling backward. Madison caught her arms while Ashley grabbed her legs. Together, they half-carried, half-dragged her toward the large trash receptacle at the end of the hallway. The metallic scent of the receptacle filled the air. "No, please," Hazel pleaded, finally realizing what they intended. "Don't do this." But her pleas only seemed to encourage them. Other students had begun to gather, mobile phones out, ready to record her humiliation for social media. Hazel could hear their laughter, their excited whispers about the spectacle they were about to witness. "This is where trash belongs," Tiffany remarked as they reached the large metal container. "Perhaps next time you'll remember your place." The three girls hoisted Hazel up and over the edge of the trash receptacle. She landed heavily on a pile of refuse sacks, the impact knocking the air out of her. But as she tried to climb out, she realized the sides were too high and too slippery. The trash receptacle was nearly full, and she was trapped. The echoes of laughter bounced around her. The laughter grew louder as Hazel struggled to find a grip on the smooth metal walls. Food scraps and sticky substances covered her clothes and hair. The smell was overwhelming, a combination of rotten food and cleaning products that made her eyes water. "Look at her now," Tiffany remarked, her voice filled with satisfaction. The little mouse in her natural habitat. Hazel could hear mobile phones clicking, recording her humiliation for posterity. Students were gathering around the trash receptacle, some laughing, others looking uncomfortable but doing nothing to help. She felt tears of anger and embarrassment burning her eyes as she continued to slip and slide against the metal walls. The metallic smell of the trash can mixed with the stench of rotting food. "Help me," she called out, her voice cracking. "Please, someone help me." But the crowd just watched, treating her predicament like entertainment. Hazel realized with crushing certainty that no one was coming to rescue her. She was going to have to rescue herself. The texture of the garbage bags was slimy and slick. It was then that she heard a different voice, cutting through the laughter and jeering. "What on earth is wrong with you people?" Hazel looked up to see a boy pushing through the crowd. She recognized him from her English class, Samuel Olson, a quiet student who kept to himself. He wasn't popular, wasn't part of any particular group, but he was tall and well-built. "Get away from there," Tiffany remarked, stepping between Samuel and the trash receptacle. "This doesn't involve you." "It involves me when I see 3 people ganging up on someone who can't defend themselves," Samuel replied. He was already reaching into the trash receptacle, offering Hazel his hand. "Come on, I'll pull you out." Hazel grabbed his hand and felt herself being lifted up and over the edge of the container. She landed on unsteady legs, her clothes stained and smelling of garbage. The crowd's laughter had died down, replaced by an awkward silence. The musty air hung heavy around them. "Are you okay?" Samuel asked, his face showing genuine concern. Hazel nodded, not trusting her voice. She was covered in food waste and humiliation, standing in front of half the academy like some kind of circus act. But Samuel's kindness cut through her shame like a lifeline. "This is pathetic," Samuel remarked, turning to address the crowd. "You're all pathetic, standing around watching while someone gets hurt, taking pictures like it's some kind of joke." A few students shuffled their feet and looked away, but most continued staring at Hazel with undisguised curiosity. She could feel their eyes on her, judging her, finding her lacking. "You made a mistake," Tiffany remarked, stepping closer to Samuel. "This isn't your concern." "You're right," Samuel replied. "It's not a concern at all. It's just 3 bullies picking on someone who won't defend themselves." Hazel felt something shift inside her at those words. Won't defend themselves. Is that what people thought? That she was weak, defenseless, unable to stand up for herself? She'd spent weeks being the perfect victim, taking their abuse with quiet dignity, trying to be the good girl her father wanted her to be. But looking at Samuel's face, seeing the disappointment in his eyes when he looked at the crowd, Hazel realized she'd been fighting the wrong battle. She'd been so focused on not becoming the fighter she used to be that she'd forgotten who she was underneath all that training and discipline. "Thank you," she said to Samuel, her voice stronger now. "I can handle it from here." Samuel looked surprised. "Are you sure? I can walk you to the nurse's office, or we can go to the headmaster together." Hazel shook her head. "I'm sure." She turned to face Tiffany, who was watching their interaction with growing annoyance. The crowd sensed something changing, the energy in the hallway shifting from amusement to anticipation. The air crackled with unspoken tension. "You think you're so tough," Hazel remarked, her voice carrying clearly through the corridor. 3 against 1, throwing someone in the garbage. Real brave." Tiffany's face flushed red. "What did you just say to me?" "I said you're not as tough as you think you are," Hazel replied, taking a step forward. "You want to know what real tough looks like?" The crowd was completely silent now, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Hazel could feel their attention like a physical weight, but instead of shrinking from it, she stood straighter. "You're about to discover what happens when you push the wrong person too far," Hazel continued. "See? I've been trying to be pleasant. I've been trying to blend in and make friends and be the kind of person who doesn't cause problems." She took another step forward, and for the first time, Tiffany took a step back. The scent of perfume and fear hung in the air. "But you know what I realized while I was sitting in that trash receptacle, covered in garbage, listening to all of you laugh?" Hazel's voice was getting stronger with each word. "I realized I've been lying to myself. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not because I thought it would make people like me more." Hazel reached up and pulled the hair tie from her hair, letting her braid fall loose around her shoulders. Then she stripped off her baggy sweatshirt, revealing the lean, muscled physique she'd been hiding for weeks. The sound of the elastic band snapping echoed in the silence. "My name is Hazel Carmichael," she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who'd finally remembered who she was. "I'm a 2nd-degree black belt in kickboxing. I've been training since I was 8 years old. I've won 2 regional championships and placed first in nationals once." The crowd's murmur was like a physical wave, spreading outward as students processed this information. Hazel could see the shock on their faces, the sudden realization that they'd been watching the wrong show. "I came here trying to be someone different," Hazel continued, "someone quiet and peaceful and ordinary. But you know what? There's nothing ordinary about letting bullies push you around. There's nothing peaceful about standing by while someone gets hurt." Tiffany was backing away now, her two friends flanking her but looking uncertain. The confident smirk had vanished from her face, replaced by something Hazel recognized as fear. The fluorescent lights of the hallway glinted off her perfectly styled hair. "You want to know what real power looks like?" Hazel asked, settling into a fighting stance that her body remembered even after weeks of suppression. It's not ganging up on someone who won't defend themselves. It's not humiliating people who are different from you. Real power is having the strength to hurt someone and choosing not to. She took another step forward, and her movement was different now, fluid, controlled, dangerous. The crowd could see it, the way she carried herself, the way she moved with purpose and precision. The air thickened with anticipation. "But here's the thing about choice," Hazel said, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire hallway. "It's only a choice when you have options. And you just took away all my options." What happened next was over in seconds, but it would be replayed in slow motion in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. Tiffany, perhaps realizing that words weren't going to save her, lunged forward with a wild swing aimed at Hazel's face. The scent of her expensive perfume filled Hazel's nostrils. Hazel stepped aside so smoothly it looked like she was dancing. Her left hand caught Tiffany's wrist, redirecting the momentum, while her right palm struck upward, connecting with Tiffany's shoulder and sending her spinning. Tiffany hit the lockers hard and slumped to the floor, stunned. The sound of her body impacting the metal echoed through the hallway. Madison tried to grab Hazel from behind, but Hazel had already sensed the movement. She spun around, her legs sweeping Madison's feet out from under her. Madison went down hard, her head bouncing off the polished floor. The taste of copper filled her mouth as she bit her tongue. Ashley was smarter than her friends. She took one look at Hazel's stance, at the way she moved with lethal precision, and backed away with her hands raised. The slickness of the floor threatened to betray her. "I don't want any problems," Ashley said, her voice shaking. "Then you shouldn't have started any," Hazel replied, but she didn't advance. She stood in the center of the hallway, breathing calmly, while Tiffany and Madison groaned on the floor around her. The red mark on Tiffany's shoulder stood out against her expensive blouse. The crowd was completely silent now, staring at Hazel with a mixture of awe and fear. She could see mobile phones still recording, but she didn't care anymore. Let them record. Let them see what happened when you pushed someone too far. The weight of their gaze was palpable. "Is everyone okay?" Hazel asked, her voice gentle again. She looked at Madison, who was sitting up and holding her head, then at Tiffany, who was struggling to get to her feet. The metallic scent of blood lingered in the air. "You're crazy," Tiffany said, her voice shaky. "You're completely psycho." "No," Hazel replied. "I'm just tired of being your victim." She walked over to where her satchel had fallen and picked it up, slinging it over her shoulder. The crowd parted as she moved through them, students stepping aside with newfound respect. The whispers followed her like a shadow. "Hazel," Samuel called after her. "Are you sure you're okay?" She turned back to him, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled. "I'm perfect." The sound of her boots on the polished floor echoed in the silence. The news of the brawl spread through Oakhaven Academy like wildfire. By the end of the school day, everyone knew about the quiet transfer student who turned out to be a martial arts champion. The video of the confrontation went viral within hours, but instead of embarrassing Hazel, it made her a legend. The flickering screens of their devices reflected in their wide eyes. Students who'd ignored her for weeks suddenly wanted to be her friend. Teachers who'd overlooked the bullying began paying attention to the dynamics in their classrooms. The headmaster summoned Hazel to his office, but instead of punishment, she found herself being recruited for the academy's martial arts club. The scent of old books and polished wood filled his office, but the most satisfying change was in Tiffany and her cohorts. They tried to maintain their social status, but the video had exposed them as cowards who only picked on people they thought couldn't defend themselves. Students began standing up to them, inspired by Hazel's example. The laughter that once followed them now mocked them. Tiffany herself seemed to shrink over the following weeks. She stopped her reign of terror, avoiding Hazel entirely and keeping her head down in classes they shared. The queen bee had been dethroned, and everyone knew it. The weight of her crown had become too heavy to bear. A month later, Hazel was walking past the same trash receptacle where her humiliation had begun when she heard a quiet voice behind her. The metallic scent of the container still lingered in the air. "Hazel?" She turned to see Tiffany standing alone, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Hazel had ever seen her. The light in her eyes seemed to have dimmed. "I wanted to apologize," Tiffany said, her voice barely audible. "For what we did to you. For everything." Hazel studied her former tormentor, seeing something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Genuine remorse. The weight of her guilt seemed to be crushing her. "Why?" Hazel asked. "Why did you do it?" Tiffany looked down at her feet. "Because I was scared. I thought if I could make someone else the target, people wouldn't notice how insecure I was. It was stupid and cruel, and I'm sorry." The sound of her breathing was shallow and uneven. Hazel felt the anger she'd carried for weeks begin to dissolve. Apology accepted. "Really?" Tiffany looked up, surprised. The glimmer of hope in her eyes was fragile. "Really?" Hazel said. "But if you ever pull something like that again, with me or anyone else, we're going to have a very different conversation." The sincerity in her voice was undeniable. Tiffany nodded quickly. "I understand." As she walked away, Hazel reflected on how much had changed. She'd learned that being true to yourself didn't mean being cruel to others. She'd learned that sometimes you had to fight, not because you wanted to, but because walking away wasn't always an option. The wind rustled the leaves of the trees lining the pathway. Most importantly, she'd learned that the person you are inside will always find a way to surface. You can hide it, suppress it, deny it, but eventually you'll have to choose who you want to be. The warmth of the sun on her face felt comforting. Hazel had made her choice. She would be kind when she could, strong when she had to, and always, always true to herself. And if that meant being the girl who could put bullies in their place, then that's exactly who she'd be. The scent of freshly cut grass drifted on the breeze.